Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast. I am your host for this week, Jim Root, and I am joined by the rest of the three-man weave crew, Kai McEwen and Matt Cox. We're spread out all over the country today. I am staying on the strip for all the basketball that is happening here in Vegas. Matthew is in Hawaii. Kai is holed up in Chicago, but we've got a lot going on. We got a lot to talk about. We are going to be bringing you a BBOC episode talking all things college hoops betting every Wednesday morning. That's leading up to conference play in January, at which point our schedule is undetermined, fellas. But we will continue to provide quality content at that point. We're just not exactly sure when. It will be in your airwaves in some form or another. Keep an eye out for it.
Stay on your toes. That's all I can tell you at this point.
That's right, Maddie. On today's episode, we're going to discuss some games of the week, go through our typical format here. We got live dogs. We've got blowouts. We've got the power games of the week. Hint, Gonzaga, Duke. And we've got a couple other categories that we will get to. If you're a listener to the show, you're familiar. But we're talking power conference, talking mid-major. We do it all, projecting value on spreads that we don't know yet because they're later in the week, but we're going to do our best for it. Kai, you ready to jump in?
Jim, I'm ready to jump in. Let's do it.
All right, baby. It's like the deep end of a pool. Let's do it. It's a big week. A lot of day basketball this week because of all the tournaments. We love it, but it's overwhelming. Let's get started with our first category here, the live dog of the week. Again, I think everybody knows what this is, but if you're not, these are the teams that are underdogs that we think are very capable of winning. Matt, I want to start with you because last week you proposed, and I think kind of strongly agreed with you, maybe not strongly, but we were like, yeah, we're on board. You proposed that George Mason could win at Maryland. And you know what they did?
They got it done.
They got it done.
Yes,
and
they did.
That's what we're starting this week. We're starting with George Mason again at the Pentagon on Wednesday, taking on South Dakota State. This is kind of like a semi-home game for the Jackrabbits. They've played in this venue quite a bit before, and both of these teams will have played on Tuesday night in this particular venue. But Matt, KenPom has George Mason as a 7-point underdog. That seems like a big projected spread. Do you think the Patriots are alive again?
Yeah, it does seem high, especially because it's not like a true home game for the Jack Bunnies here. Just as a general broader take on the live dog of the week. Last week, we were in the heyday of underdogs. A money line value is at its all-time highest. The last few days, we've seen favorites roar back with vengeance. Much to our chagrin, as we've been backing a lot of large dogs, and they have folded like lawn chairs in the second halves. So just in general, trying to pounce on these money line underdogs doesn't have, I don't think, the value it had last week, but I still think there are pockets of opportunity to pounce on, of which we are highlighting here. Jim, I'm torn on this one personally. I think Mason could be a kryptonite type matchup for the Jack Bunnies. And you could also argue that the Jack Bunnies have been overvalued in the current betting markets because of how inflated their KenPom and analytic rankings have gotten. But I also think they're just awesome. So I don't think I'll be doing Moneyline Sprinkles here, but I think there's definitely value on Mason at the dog, as a dog.
Yeah, I love the Bunnies this year. And we've already seen George Mason, Jim, like you said, take down a Goliath. Why not again here in South Dakota State? Maybe a little bit of less Goliath. I mean, program history overall, grand scheme of things, George Mason probably the better program. If you want to look at the Final Four, for instance, back in like 06.
Shout out to Jimmy Lillard.
Luckily for listeners out there, you'll have the information about these two teams against Nevada and Washington, two teams that are both going to play prior to this matchup on Wednesday at the Pentagon. So maybe you can get a couple more inklings out of that. I think George Mason's defense is just way better than South Dakota State's defense. So I see Mason scoring pretty easily here. And I'm going to be looking to back George Mason.
Yeah, the thing about South Dakota State is they can spread you out with like bigger playmaking wings, and that's not going to bother George Mason. Like they've got Deshaun Schwartz and Devontae Gaines that can big ticket gains. That's his nickname.
Ticket gains.
Those guys can spread out, and Devon Cooper, like they've got versatility. They got size on the wing that can be switchable and take care of business against those South Dakota State guys. And if you have an athletic edge over the Jackrabbits, that's sometimes their kryptonite as well. And we definitely think that George Mason does. Oduro is a phenomenal big man. He's not going to be pushed around by Douglas Wilson inside. It's 7. There's no way the spread is 7. I would imagine it's something like 4, if that, maybe 3. Yeah. But still looking to back George Mason as a dog here. I think these teams are pretty even. So kind of a coin flip matchup. If you're getting points, that's what we're looking for. All right, next one on the outline, a little bit bigger of an underdog. Heading down to Kissimmee, Florida, one of these neutral site events. I believe this is the ESPN Events Invitational, formerly the Old Spice Classic, formerly the Advocare Invitational, aka the Pyramid Scheme Invitational.
Pyramid Scheme Special, baby.
Yep.
That's right.
Yep. Got North Texas taking on Kansas. Kansas is a 15-point favorite. As we know, North Texas is a dangerous underdog because they took down Purdue, a Purdue team that's looked incredible, albeit, a year ago, but they took down Purdue in the NCAA tournament. They slow the game down. They minimize possessions. They play great defense. They're extremely well coached by Grant McCasland. Kai, do you think North Texas, the Mean Green, can at least make top 5 Kansas team think about this game?
Yeah, as you said, it's neutral, not the fog. So, all right, automatically, we don't have that going for Kansas. I don't see the spread being 15 like Kim Pom has it. I bet it's a little bit lower than that, just given North Texas's reputation in the market. First game back for Jalen Wilson, Matt, I believe. Sometimes these teams struggle integrating a star player back in the lineups we've seen.
Yes.
I think everyone expects immediate improvement. Not always the case. It can actually affect it kind of negatively game one. We've already established a rhythm the previous 3 games. You throw in a guy who wants the ball, expects to have the ball. It can just kind of throw things off a little bit. And North Texas just plays so tough. Obviously, scoring is going to be a concern for this team, especially against a good KU defense. But man, are they well coached with McCasland.
Yeah, you bring up the trouble integrating key guys back into the fold after a extended period of time. For those listening to this, you would have already have seen yesterday, if you're listening on Tuesday, to Kofi Coburn coming back for Illinois. I mean, obviously, it's a stretch of a comparison, but maybe you see Illinois struggle in that game. That's sort of a corollary to a team like Kansas putting in a piece like Jalen Wilson. So suddenly, just North Texas in general, you guys mentioned it, there's such a perfect underdog, both as just a back with spread and catching points or just a money line. They suck the life out of you. Your offense, they bait you into jump shots. The pack line is ironclad, and Kansas has a propensity to take some bad shots, especially with Remy Martin there playing such a high usage role. And I just think that North Texas has enough shot makers. We've seen Tyler Perry, who's the new sort of unknown JUCO star that Grant McCasland has turned over a stone and uncovered a diamond in the rough, as he always does. You're going to have to make some shots to beat Kansas. If you're looking at like an actual money line, win here, and they have a guy who can do that. So a guy late in the shot clock that can get you a bucket when everything else breaks down. I'm with you, Jim. This is a good call by you. Everything sets up here for a cover. And because the possession is going to play so low, it doesn't feel like it should be a 15-point spread. So it should play like a 3-4 possession type game. Should be a lot closer.
Matt, how do you like Tyler Perry's House of Rain?
House of Rain, that's good. I know we've been still workshopping nicknames for him, but yeah, much better than Javion Hamlet had some good ones with some Shakespearean stuff. But now the House of Pain with Tyler Perry is just a cut above marketability.
Yep. Yeah, Matt, you kind of mentioned it. It's the giant killer formula. They limit possessions. They take a lot of threes. So there's wide variance. I think North Texas can hang around. I probably won't sprinkle the money line. Just Kansas is too good. I think they're a top 2 team in the country. So can't quite recommend that. But I think that at least on the spread, there's some value here. I'm
just way too giddy over hitting money lines after our performance last week, Jim. So you're right. Kansas is awesome. I don't know why I'm talking myself into this like it's going to be a surefire coin flip game. Kansas is the real deal.
Yep. Hey, let's stay in Kissimmee, guys. There's another mid-major versus power conference matchup. And this one is a rematch of the NCAA tournament last year. We've got Alabama and Iona. It was a 2-15 game in the NCAA tournament. Now we're here with a potentially even better Iona team. They haven't really blown the doors off anyone this season, though. Been kind of rough in first halves, have come back and battled and remain undefeated, but it's not been in convincing fashion. Meanwhile, Alabama has torched almost everybody. South Alabama hung around, but the other 3 games, the Tide have been outstanding. Kai, do you think that Iona competes here, coming off the familiarity of that NCAA tournament matchup, or are the Tide just too good this year?
I think they're too good. And we put Alabama on upset alert, I think week 1 against Louisiana Tech.
And they laughed at us.
I don't think it's happening here. Tempo is going to be high, Matt, and I think that plays more towards an Alabama route. That tournament game, 13-point game, I think Iona actually covered, which was a little bit surprising at the time as well. Bama's just proven they have another gear this season. So I am not going to be sprinkling the Gales here.
Yeah, me either. Also, Elijah Joyner may be out for this game. He is arguably Iona's second best guard, one of their most important backcourt pieces, has some hip issue, and they've already had a myriad of other, B-list type injuries. This Iona team is going to be awesome, and I think they're a team you want to star as a look to back and get hot when fully healthy. They've still played very well, even with some of those headwinds early on. But this matchup right now, and given the Joyner injury, I can't in good faith back the Gales.
Yeah, he went down as though he was like done for the season, and then he came back against Liberty. Like he came back into the game. So maybe he's okay, but I'm sure that's something that's going to be sore over multiple days. And yeah, I think Alabama is outstanding. They've got that three-headed guard monster, the Jays we've talked about in the past, Davison, Quinerly, and Shackelford, and they're getting emerging contributions. Bediako, the freshman, has been really good lately, the big man. So I think Alabama kind of runs away and hides in this one, especially first half, because we've seen Iona with so many slow starts lately. So definitely not the one that we're looking at as dog value. Two more in this section. Let's hit. Oklahoma State is headed on the road to Oral Roberts. This is kind of shocking, but we did see the Cowboys go to UT Arlington to start the season last year. Boynton has clearly shown a willingness to play real mid-major road games. And this one's pretty scary. We obviously know what Oral Roberts did in the tournament last year. Max Asmus was a beast, but he was not a beast in their most recent outing. He was 0 for 12 in the first half against Central Arkansas, finished 3 for 18. They lost to Central Arkansas. Bad L. Matt, can Oklahoma State blow them out, or do we see like the incredible Oral Roberts team that we saw in the tournament this time around?
The problem with Oral Roberts is that they're playing like the team that we saw before the tournament. Offense, very fun. Defense, optional. Neighboring on apathetic. And they gave up 109 to Colorado State, gave up 70 to Central Arkansas. And that's not a lot of points, but it's not a very good offense. And they have no rim protection. I believe their 2-point percentage defense is bottom 10 in the country, giving wide open looks to opposing. So the defense is very shoddy. But Jim, as you mentioned, this is going to probably be a high variance type of game just because of the shot selection, the amount of threes that Oral Roberts can take and make, especially when Asmus is on. And it sets up Kai to be like the ultimate bounce back spot where maybe they were just bored against a team they didn't really take seriously going on the road. And now they're back home in a hype spot in Tulsa and they get hot and they knock off the Cowpokes. Could certainly see it. Oral Roberts is still a team that I think we need to pump the brakes on. Remember who they were before they were awesome in March last year.
Yeah, overrated, I think, by most prognosticators out there. Not by us, Matthew. Not by you, Mr. Summit writer.
Yeah, I picked them third or fourth, right?
Yeah.
Disrespect.
Had Oklahoma State not lost to Oakland, I'd probably be looking at Tulsa here as a money line, or excuse me, Oral Roberts is a money line special here. But since they did, I think they're a little bit more aware of giving up a game against a live dog like this. Last season, worth noting, Oklahoma State won by just 5 at home last season against Oral Roberts. Certainly a better Oral Bob team, but still early in the season when they're still figuring things out. That Central Arkansas loss was head-scratching. Asmus being 3 for 18 from the floor, that probably proves to be an anomaly. Oral Roberts is going to be up for this game, but Jim, it's only about an hour drive for Oklahoma State. Not a whole lot of home here, I think. KenPom has a spread around 10. That's probably what it'll be on what is this, Saturday or so? Friday. I'm going to lean towards Oral Roberts.
Yeah, this is tough. The home team getting hype against Big Brother, like in-state Big Brother, it always scares me. Like backing the road favorite when it's the Super Bowl for the home team, that certainly scares me a little bit. And perhaps that's part of the Central Arkansas performance was a look ahead. Like we get to maybe have a chance at Oklahoma State, and they did not take a team seriously that, frankly, I understand why they didn't, because Central Arkansas has been terrible. But I would definitely stay away from this one because I just don't know what we're going to get. Matt, with the high variance take is, I think, the key point here. All right, last one. And this one is going to be my money line special, just to spoil it here. I really think the road dog gets it done. We've got Louisiana Tech headed to NC State. KenPom has this at -6. So this isn't a monumental kind of upset or anything, not a double-digit dog, but I just think Louisiana Tech in this version of them and this version of NC State, the mid-major team's better. Kenneth Lawton can dominate the paint. There's no Manny Bates for the entire season for the Wolfpack. Their interior rotation is soft and questionable outside of that. And Louisiana Tech guards are good enough. I think they can take care of the ball against any NC State pressure. Kai, am I crazy? Or can the Bulldogs walk into NC State and get this done?
I think they can too. Without Manny Bates, man, they're weak inside, like you said. I think Lofton has a field day here. NC State, Matt, has yet to cover a game all season. One of the very few teams that is 0-for against the spread. Louisiana Tech is very, very live in this situation.
Yeah, here's my concern. Isaiah Crawford has not played or did not yet hurt, I think, 3 games in. The timing of this episode, so Louisiana Tech will have a game Wednesday. So check to see if he played, if you're very interested, if you're picking up what Jim and Kai are putting down. I think if he's back, I think this is a home run play. He's very important to the offense. He provides some good inside-out balance. They have other guards, other playmakers, but I think he's probably their best perimeter player, maybe second best behind Archibald? Am I blanking on?
Amari Archibald. I mean, they're
all good. They're kind of interchangeable. That's a good point. Maybe I'm overplaying that, but Lofton's awesome. My only concern here is that NC State replicates the same formula we saw Alabama against La Tech, where they sort of ran up and down and took Lofton out of the game. But I think Lofton's too good, and I think Conkle has learned from that, and this is a pretty live dog spot. So I will give the official cosign stamp of approval on this one.
Boom. I love it. And I mean, NC State's just not as good as Alabama. Doesn't have the
right. It's a different gear.
Yeah, they don't have the guards to dictate the tempo. Like, this one sets up a lot better for Louisiana Tech. Kai, we got a couple others listed. I know you're curious about New Mexico playing UAB here in Vegas as a 15-point underdog in KenPom. That does seem huge.
Yeah. Spread can't be that high, right?
No, the market has bet New Mexico in every game they played.
Yeah. I think the market knows New Mexico was undervalued in KenPom based on last year's total fluke of a season. I'm not sure if New Mexico can beat UAB because UAB's been truly fantastic, I guess, except the South Carolina game,
which they almost came back and won. They got close.
Certainly keeps it within double digits, I think. So we'll see what the spread ends up being on Thursday.
Here's the risk. Jalen House went to the locker room with an ankle boo-boo last game. And if he's not around to handle some of the pressure for UAB, I think the backcourt could end up melting. Jamal Mashburn would be overwhelmed by the responsibilities there. So keep an eye out on House's status. Sorry, Matt, go ahead.
No, that was my point. Matty injuries today. So that was my final just caveat to Kai's point. But yeah, I think that spread, if it was close to KenPom, would be way too high.
Matty Mash unit.
Matty Mash unit, baby.
That. All right, let's go to our next category. This is blowout city. We're looking for teams that we know the spread's going to be big, but we think they can absolutely demolish the competition anyways. Last week, we were properly able to knock or to correctly guess that Baylor would destroy Central Arkansas. So we got that one right. I think we predicted a St. John's domination.
Seton Hall over Fairleigh Dickinson.
So that's the one.
Yep.
Yeah.
So even though the spread's going to be large, we just think these blowouts are really going to get out of hand. And we'll start off with Houston Baptist at Oklahoma. This is on Wednesday. Houston Baptist went to Texas A&M, who is not a good big favorite. They're just not. They don't have the offensive firepower. And Texas A&M beat them by 35. Like it was not a competition at all. Probably not even that close. Like Houston Baptist was just never in the game. Now they go to an Oklahoma team that's probably a little angry following the championship loss to Utah State in the Myrtle Beach Invitational. I think Oklahoma just absolutely crushes them, Matt. They're starting to get the Porter Moser identity with a great passing big man, some skilled bigs, and a really stout defensive unit. I don't see how Houston Baptist scores here.
Right. It's similar to what we saw in the Texas A&M game, where if you have a team that just plays solid, stingy defense, it will bother Houston Baptist, and that will just be like a red carpet for transition opportunities and like Harlem Globetrotter type dunks at the other end. I mean, the Texas A&M announcers were laughing at how many dunks they were getting in that game. And I think this could be a repeat movie here, Kai.
Yeah. In addition, they lost by 44 to Texas. Oklahoma's not quite as good as Texas, but it's clear Houston Baptist is not in the same gym as these power teams. Heck, I mean, they lost by 13 to Denver. This team is very, very bad. Not super unexpected coming into the year. I thought they'd be a little bit better maybe, but they just can't compete. So I agree, Jim. OU is a clear roast for me this week.
Yep. All right. Next one, Clemson hosting Charleston Southern on Friday. I had some problems with this one, but went back and forth. Clemson as a big favorite doesn't like leap out to me because the offense isn't mega potent. But Matt, we saw this year Maybe it is. They knocked down a ton of threes in the Charleston Classic. I believe it was the Charleston Classic. And they've got some skilled bigs, PJ Hall, Hunter Tyson, some guards that can make plays with Honor and Alamir Dawes. Meanwhile, Charleston Southern coming off an awful year, lost their defensive player of the year in Flan Fleming. He's at Florida. They did get Travis Anderson back. He debuted coming off an injury, but I don't know if there's enough firepower here to hang around with Clemson, especially if they continue to defend the way they did.
Yeah, this doesn't feel like a hard roast to me, but Clemson has been offensively brilliant so far. I think we have to change our priors of Clemson basketball. You guys like Hunter Tyson and PJ Hall, true inverted inside out dual threat bigs that can step out, shoot it, make plays off the dribble, dish it, be the kind of trigger men within the offense there. I love this Clemson version. I just don't know if Charleston Southern is ripe to be blown out. I know they're starting to press more again this year, which that could play to a high pace and that leads to potential blowouts. But I still think there's actual pockets of mini talent on Chuck South's roster. Am I reaching there? I feel like there's okay players on this.
No,
roster.
I think Chuck South's very bad.
Just bad.
One
Okay.
of the worst in the country. Lost Ole Miss by 25, Wake by 36.
Yeah, the Wake one's the one where it's like, okay.
Yeah, that's not great. Bob Jones, though, Kai, took down Bob Jones 1963. It's a good ball club they have there.
They took down Bob Jones. Good win there. Clemson 1.35 points per possession against Bryant. I'm thinking that type of game against Charleston Southern.
Yeah, I think that's entirely possible. This might be like a roast that stays under where Charleston Southern just struggles to score.
Jim, to put a bow on this. Oh, sorry, we have one more. I'll put my bow after we open the final present.
Oh, we got two. Matt. We got one on Friday, one Saturday.
Read the outline, Matthew. Read the outline.
And these are two teams that were incredibly impressive this weekend in their MTEs, and now they're taking on teams that we have some serious questions about. First is Purdue hosting Nebraska-Omaha. And if Purdue wants to, I think they could win this game by 60. Like if they just decided we're going to keep feeding our bigs, we're going to keep our starters on the floor a lot, they could destroy Omaha, who has had myriad injury issues this year. Lamell Robinson is yet to play. He's their best guard. Wichita State transfer big man Isaiah Poor Chandler missed their last game. They just got Wanjang Tut back from injury for his debut, but he's not the same quite yet. This is just Purdue can name their number. It's basically they have the choice of whether they cover or not.
I'm almost worried they might just rest like Edie or Williams. That's how confident Purdue probably feels coming into this game. But if they all play, which most likely they do, this is going to be a 50-point game. Omaha is feels like a team of misery right now, Kai. There's probably no hope or optimism until they get any semblance of their full roster back. And when you have a team that mentally has that type of stuff creeping into your head, it gets to 10, 15, and that can get to 40 or 50 in a hurry.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest mismatches ever, I think. Bloodbath of the century inside. Omaha might not get one stop. I'll be shocked if Purdue doesn't win by 40 this game.
Yeah, especially if Poor Chandler doesn't play. I don't see how they get a rebound. Like it just could be a total bloodbath on the glass. Matt, I don't think they'll rest the big dudes because neither one's playing 20 minutes a game.
They kind of have a natural load management system because they're so deep and they can kind of interchange. That's a good point.
Right. All right. The other one we want to mention here, Saturday, Arizona is hosting Sacramento State. Arizona looked like a national title contender, winning the Roman main event. Just blew out Michigan in the final. A mega impressive performance. Sacramento State is dealing with an interim coach after the head boss, Brian Katz, stepped down right before the season, kind of figuring out their identity. They're a slower team, but they don't have a ton of offensive firepower or size outside of Comagum, the one big guy. Arizona could just demolish them if they're engaged. This is the same thing where it's like, is it a letdown because they just played like an absolute home run game? Or are they just on a different stratosphere and they get the blowout here? Kai, how are you feeling about this one?
Stratosphere. And the train's leaving the station for Arizona. They're holy shit good. You don't have much time left to jump on the bandwagon. They already have 2 50-plus point wins this year against Rio Grande Valley and against North Dakota State. The second one's super eye-popping. Yeah. That team shouldn't lose by 50 to anybody. But, I don't think Sac State can hang around in this game. Utah beat them by 33. So this is going to be another 40, 50-point game.
Yeah, I actually think the letdown concern is mitigated by the fact that Arizona will be off for 6 straight days. So I think there's a element of antsiness and excitement to get back on the court after they just beat Michigan. So they'll have the hangover for maybe Monday, Tuesday. They go out, they get hammered. in Tucson.
Yeah, I mean,
They wake up Wednesday, they detox Thursday, Friday, they're back in the gym. And by the time weekend comes around, they're ready for demolition. So yeah, I like the Cats here.
Yeah, they have the blowout potential this year because Lloyd is letting them run quite a bit. Like he gives them a lot more freedom than Sean Miller did. So this is kind of a different Arizona team. They're a different kind of system. They are fantastic. Kyle, you mentioned the trains leaving the station during their game Friday against Wichita. I bet them 95-1 to win the NCAA tournament. And by the time they're like during the game against Michigan, there's no price 60-1, like lower than 60-1. And I bet after that demolition, it's probably even lower today, like 40-1. They just clearly announced their presence. They're one of the biggest teams in the entire country. I believe second in average height per KenPom. They're awesome. They're so good. All right, guys, let's get to the power game of the week. There's a couple, but we're going to start with Gonzaga Duke. This is the headliner. Matt, your boys, the Blue Devils, coming here to Vegas, a game I will be at in attendance here, taking on Gonzaga, who has already rolled Texas. But it feels like Duke's a bit of a better matchup for them, right? They've got some better individual defenders inside. They're bigger. They're a little more have a defined identity right now. We saw them take down Kentucky. Do you think Duke can get this done outright, Matthew?
Yes, I do. I think there's a money line.
Wow.
I think if you're catching 4 or higher, there's some money line value on the Devils. As you know, here in the outline, it has the spread, or KenPom projects it to be a 6-point game. You probably all agree it won't be that high. But the Zags have been pretty dominant so far. I think the key thing to know here is that the dominance against Texas was rooted in the fact that Texas is A, work in progress, and B, very soft up front, which is sort of it's not what you think of a crispier team, but without Dylan Disu, that's what they were, and Timmy just feasted. Duke is a bunch of men up front. Theo John, Mark Williams, Paulo Banchero. I think Timmy is, I think you can out physical Timmy, sort of like the Baylor blueprint we saw last year, kind of national title game. You take him away, I think you make Gonzaga a lot less dangerous. I think the Devils are up for this game. It feels like they've been playing a lot of like nothing burger type of non-con games, sort of sleepwalking through a few of them. This sets up for a big hype spot for a team that needs like an emotional jolt to get them to play their best. So I love Duke here. I hate that I do, but I do.
I think the spread will be 6.
You'll be that high?
It was 7 or so against Texas. Yeah, I mean, it was in Spokane, I guess. But yeah, this Gonzaga has UCLA on Tuesday. So maybe we get a more of a feel, more insight from that game. But I don't know if Duke can stop Timmy. Mark Williams and Theo John maybe in the post, but if Timmy decides to pull him out on the perimeter, and I think he can take him off the dribble. I mean, he's very, very good. He does whatever he wants. Banchero versus Holmgren is going to be the main story that everyone's going to be talking about here. Should be a fun matchup. Advantage Banchero, in my opinion, but I know these two. I believe they've faced each other before. Jim, correct me if I'm wrong on that one.
I think so in the AAU schedule.
Yeah.
I do think Timmy's the story though, because we've kind of seen no one be able to stop him one-on-one. Like he dominated Evan Mobley, and granted Evan Mobley's strength as a defender isn't like one-on-one post defense. Like he's not a super stout guy, but I mean, he just put him in the spin cycle with his pivots, with his very patient footwork in the post. If you can't stop Timmy one-on-one, you have to double. And then that's when the Gonzaga ball movement comes in. And I'm started to get a little more on board with their shooting. I think Strother is a legitimate beast. And Bolton is knocking down shots. When he's not having to create everything, he's a pretty darn good shooter because he doesn't have to be the number one guy like he was at Iowa State. So very curious to see Duke here. And also, I think the Holmgren rim protection is going to be important. It's the first game where maybe Duke can try to expose Timmy a little bit, get him moving in more pick and roll. That Texas offense that has so many wrinkles to iron out still that Duke will probably be the first real test for it. And if Holmgren's length really shows up big here, then that's what I think could separate Gonzaga. I am staying away, Matt. I respect you for going for the money line sprinkle here. All right, next up, we've got the Maui Championship. We don't know who is playing there. We're kind of guessing it'll be Houston, Oregon, but we don't want to dive into a matchup breakdown for a game that might not even happen. Same kind of goes for the battle for Atlantis. I would love to see Baylor and UConn in the final. I think those are two just incredible defensive teams, and that will be a war. But Michigan State is lurking. Auburn is lurking. Heck, even Syracuse could get crazy hot with their zone in a short turnaround time and get a surprising upset there. So we're not going to dive into those too much, but One other one we will mention for the possible game of the week, Memphis and Virginia Tech from Brooklyn on Wednesday night. This is the first real test for Memphis. They kind of flirted with disaster for a while against Western Kentucky before extending late. Now they leave FedEx Forum, taking on a really well-coached, disciplined team that's going to take care of the ball and really challenge this Memphis team to play in the half court. Kai, do you think Virginia Tech can knock off the Tigers? Because, man, I think this might be the first time we see Memphis exposed a little bit.
Yeah, so KenPom's got it Memphis -1. Virginia Tech hasn't played a top 150 team. That concerns me a little bit, and I think there is a stark athleticism advantage here for Memphis. Obviously, Vatek's very well coached. I think KV Aluma can handle his own against the ridiculous athletic front line of Memphis. But I'm not sure other players can, Matt. And Memphis owns SLU already. They handle Western Kentucky, two very athletic teams. You could argue they haven't played a super, super smart team yet, and maybe that is Virginia Tech here, the way they can cut them up on offense. And also Virginia Tech's defense, not too shabby as well. They can be nails in that end of the floor. I'm just really scared of the athleticism. That's what's holding me back from backing VT here.
I'll probably be on VT. I think the passing ability, the balance of passing ability on VT is the key. You need to have multiple ball handlers, bigs included, that can help break the pressure. And with Justin Mutz and KV Aluma to a lesser extent, they have guys who can help Storm Murphy handle just the swarming length and speed that Memphis will come at you with. And you're right, Kai. Virginia Tech, they've been awesome so far, but haven't played anybody. So on one hand, you look at that 5-0 against the spread record. I believe they're covering by an average of 8 points a game over those 5 games. Pretty massive average cover margin over a 5-game sample. But Memphis, I mean, categorically different animal. I do think they're a good matchup, though, just with their intelligence and the way they move the ball that could kind of thwart Memphis's athleticism advantage. I like the Hokies here. I think I do.
Yeah, that athleticism is scary because it's just like, it reminds me a little of, I think, last year, the crossover classic when St. Mary's played Memphis. And we're like, oh, I think they can execute, they can stick with them. And then suddenly in the second half, it was like, oh, that's right. What they can do. They can press and just completely overwhelm a team like this. So that is a concern for the Hokies. But man, I think Mike Young will come in with a great game plan, and I'm not entirely sold that Memphis will have the similar. So it's going to come down to whether they can execute against the athletes. All right, let's go next category, mid-major game of the week. We're just going to stick with the big home run one here, guys. Belmont versus Drake. I think this is the big one. We're going to have another game of evidence, particularly on Belmont. They're going to LSU. So they could be coming off a huge win or a stinging loss, but man, this one's in Kissimmee, and it is a great game. KenPom has it Drake -1. Kind of the Bulldogs have what it takes. They just took down Richmond at home in a game they had to come from behind here. They're going to pressure, but Belmont is pretty good against pressure. They've got a great point guard, and everyone on that team can pass. So what do you think here?
It feels like Drake still has that late game magic. As you said, they came back from behind against Richmond. Last year, they did that pretty much every single game last season, and they were like 20-0 against the spread. It feels like they still have that, Matt, and they're just such a great team. I really like this Drake squad. Belmont has that loss to Ohio. You know, there's maybe still an at-large in play there. I don't know. They're definitely going to be coming out for this game. So can certainly score. But I'm scared to fade Drake in general after last season, after this year's start.
Not fading Drake, point blank. That's all I have to say there. I guess I watched the Belmont versus Furman game, and I came into that thinking, oh, Furman's a smart team. They're not going to get fooled by Belmont's backdoor continuity stuff. And still, even Furman, until you can prepare for it, you can watch it on tape, but when you get out there and the cuts and the passes are so well timed, that's how Belmont sort of pads their efficiency. Even against Drake, as smart as they are and as intelligent as they are, I think Belmont gets a lot of buckets like that. I'm still not fading Drake, though. I guess I lean Belmont with the matchup on the floor, but I'm still Operation Fade Drake, not doing it. Never.
Yeah, I kind of lean Drake. I mean, Belmont, when they stepped up in class against Ohio, they did not look great. And they were down most of that game against Furman in another mid-major showdown. They did come back and I think squeak out a cover in overtime, which, boy, that would have been a pain if you were on the Paladins. I apologize if that's a sore spot, but I just think Drake is too good right now. And unless we see Belmont like pull off a performance that I'm not sure they're capable of against LSU, I'll probably be backing Drake if it's just a -1 type spread. All right, guys, we got to mention the call your eyes out game of the week, the make your eyes bleed, the don't watch, the turn your TV off game of the week.
Degenerate special.
Yep. If you're betting this game, goodness, you're wild. It's Dayton versus Miami. We've covered every game in the Kissimmee opening round now. This one is gross to me. Dayton, I don't know how it gets bleaker or darker for this team. They've lost 3 bye games already. UMass Lowell, Austin P, and Lipscomb by 20. Like they got run out the gym.
Which we told you on this podcast. We told you. We warned you. We warned you.
Matt and his dog of the week money line sprinkle there. Dayton's just bad. And Miami's not really a team we trust either. They blew a big lead at FAU. They got kind of run out by UCF. Both these teams are just kind of gross right now. Not the type of game where I'm like watching to learn something. I just am staying away entirely, Matthew.
Yeah, Miami 1-3 against the spread this year. I think Larenega's ATS record's been pretty putrid the last few seasons. Injury is a big part of that. But Kai, I'm running out of excuses for the Canes. So it's kind of like SMU with me. I'm trying to find a way to avoid relapsing over a team that I've fallen in love with. And yeah, this is not a game I want to watch. I'd argue there's probably a little bit of value on the Canes just because of how bad Dayton's been, but I'm not betting Miami right now. Just don't trust them.
Kim Palm's got it at 4 on a neutral. Miami has to be better than 4 points against this Dayton team right now.
Agree.
On neutral. But Miami blows every single lead. They're frustrating to bet on. That Florida Atlantic game was just pull your hair out. Talk about claw your eyes out, Jim. Pull your hair out. That's what it's like to bet on Miami. So I really want no piece of this, but man, if it's 4 or 5, I think you have to take a shot at fading Dayton.
Yeah, Miami also was up 17 in the opener against Canisius and then just went to sleep and let Canisius come back and cover that game too. So it's just not a team that I really trust at all. But Dayton is so bad right now. So bad. All right, let's finish up with a spotlight on some of the against the spread monsters and non-monsters, the wagons and the lame wads, the bad squads and the great ones. Start off with Alabama State. Out of the SWAC, Kai, we've seen these mid-major or low major teams be dominant against the spread so far this year. Although that's waning just a bit, but not for Alabama State. They've been outstanding. They got that overtime cover against North Carolina Central that hurt our souls. They've just been outstanding.
Yeah, and look who they've done it against, right? Iowa, Missouri State, Vanderbilt, Western Kentucky. These are Iowa State as well. Sure, power conference teams, high major teams. It's impressive. I don't know how Mo Williams is doing it down there because I didn't think this was a very good team coming into the year, but hey, maybe I was wrong, Matt. You're a Hornets guy. You were a Hornets early backer, I think.
I don't know. I wasn't.
Matt's horny for the Hornets.
I was horny for some other SWAC schools. Alabama State was not one of them. I think I had them in my basement. A lot of swings and misses on the HBCU previews from my end. In general, I think the SWAC, MEAC, Southland, awesome Torrent ATS run is about to fade as we get to later parts of non-conference. I think just the taxing wear and tear of the travel is going to catch up to them, as well as the odds makers may perhaps over adjusting to the large dog competence early on. So I think those two forces in tandem could set up for good fade opportunities of Alabama State and other SWAC, MEAC, Southland type teams that have been awesome against the numbers so far.
Yep, I'm with you, and I think we started to see it a little bit. Sunday. There was
Sunday, especially,
some blowouts there.
Grambling just folded. Norfolk folded. Who else? There's a few other that's just like, we're done.
The UAB absolutely demolished somebody. I can't remember. Alabama A&M. Yep. So it is starting to correct a little bit. So be careful of that trend. A couple other teams have been great. St. Thomas 5-1 against the spread. This is baffling. They lost outright to Chicago State on opening day, and then have just ripped off 5 great performances.
Yeah.
Hard to understand, hard to get a really proper rating on this team just because there's no historical priors to look at. So maybe stay away from the Tommies until we get a better idea of who they are.
It's super frustrating, Jim, but also a good lesson to not overreact to one result. And that's what, unfortunately, we did on the Tommies.
Yep. Virginia Tech and LSU are both undefeated against the spread against inferior competition at home. Of course, LSU's got Belmont, so this could change between the time we're recording this and when it is posted, so keep an eye out for that. Kai, a couple others are surprising. Minnesota, undefeated ATS, a team that everyone was low on coming into the year, bit of a mid-major all-star type roster. Ben Johnson's got them playing well.
I'm shocked, and it's not like they've beaten just crap teams like South Carolina, Western Kentucky. Princeton. Those aren't bad teams. So hat tip to Minnesota. Spreads haven't been big or anything like that because they've been underrated in the market clearly. Maybe the Gophers keep it up. I still think they kind of get trounced in Big Ten play, but we'll see.
Yeah. And then Matt, I'll kick it to you for Monmouth. You're a big fan of King Rice's boys, and they've been terrific so far this year, playing through Walker Miller of UNC.
Yeah, you have a UNC transfer in a MAC playground. He was
a walk-on there, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was, but I think he's still like a really good. They wanted him to, I think, play initially at UNC, but I guess they had the stable of big. So, like, was it ever really going to happen? Smartly, he transfers to King Rice, fittingly, former UNC disciple under Roy Williams. They also have Shavar Reynolds, the former starting point guard for Seton Hall, along with Marcus McClary, who is a diamond of a Tasmanian Devil defensive, do everything Swiss Army knife, and our boy Georgie Papas. That is an awesome foursome. And they've been great to start. I think this could be the second best team in the MAC and sneak into potentially the top spot if Iona has some more injury issues. So just a team you want to look to tag as a potential mini rocket ship going forward, the Hawks.
Yep. Walker Miller is a perfect transition point to one of the lame wads, one of the bad ATS teams. North Carolina has not covered a game yet. They got close. They got close against Charleston, but man, this team, and it's one reason they don't play any defense. They can't cover because they don't play defense.
Jim, their guards are just also super selfish. They're dumb. Like Caleb Love takes really, really bad shots. The peak example was against Tennessee yesterday, heading into the halftime. They had 20 seconds on the clock, and Love just dribbled it at the top. Then he passed it to Davis, passed it back. Love took a 30-footer. That was the possession. And after seeing that, I said, okay, dropping UNC, not betting on them anymore. It's just a frustrating team.
4-1 to the over, going over that number by an average of 15 points a game. So that equates. Pretty good offense, improved with defense. But defense, go ahead and score opposing team. That's what they're saying.
Yep. A couple others in power conferences, Oregon State and NC State, both 0-5 against the spread. Oregon State's lost, is it 3 bye games now or 2? They've lost to Samford. They lost to Princeton.
Tulsa.
I think they're 1-4. Yeah, that was at Tulsa and at Iowa State. Like that's just look that Elite Eight run was an all-time mirage, folks. Unfortunately. And then lastly, Ryder 0-5. Dayton, we already mentioned, very bad. Washington, terrible. See if they can get one against George Mason tonight. I certainly hope not. But folks, those are the bad squads against the spread. Any other closing thoughts, Kai, Matt?
Nothing, Jim. I'm excited for another great week, feast week. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone out there. Enjoy the Maui, enjoy the Atlantis.
Yep. Stuff your faces with basketball.
Stuff faces with basketball and food, Jim. Good food.
Absolutely. Matt, when are you back from Maui?
I think Thursday, late Thursday, barring any travel setbacks. That's the hope.
Concerning.
I also may just never leave. Unclear.
There you go.
You'll find out on next week's episode.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. Please rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts. If you would be so kind, that would be wonderful. We appreciate that. Action Network appreciates that. Listen on Spotify, wherever you're looking for your podcasts. But we will see you next week, next Wednesday on the Big Bets on Campus podcast.